Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. We'll be live here in about a minute and a half. Today's interview is pre-recorded yesterday with Tarda Sisto, and I thank you all for joining us. Once that is over, I'll have a brief, share my thoughts briefly with you, and look forward to doing that. So hang tight, and we'll be going up in just a moment. Hey, good evening, and thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I'm actually recording this episode a little earlier than normal, so this is not a live broadcast. Although I'll probably be live after the video that I show. Um, uh, I would love to be able to talk about the stuff going on in Ukraine. The transfer of NATO weapons from the Baltics to Ukraine. I think is a very weighty issue going on right now. And of course, the celebrity deaths of Meatloaf and Louis Anderson. It's been a rough month for celebrities already in 2022. It's starting to feel like 2016 with the amount of celebrity deaths going on. But there's a weightier issue within the Libertarian Party that we need to talk about. And before we get too deep into that, I want to talk about my sponsor this tonight's episode, and that is the Deep End Antiques. It is in Beckley, West Virginia. Those who know me, those who have watched my hockey podcast, my partner Travis Rednick runs the Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia. They have great stuff from glass to military surplus to the best hockey memorabilia that you will see anywhere in the state of West Virginia. The guy collects a lot of great stuff. But if you find yourself in Beckley, West Virginia, feel free to hop down to see that store, or you can visit on Facebook, facebook.com/the Deep End Antiques. Give them business. There are many COVID or many businesses that have suffered in COVID, and we need to give them our support. So, Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia. So I'm very excited today. This is one of my favorite people attached with the National Libertarian Party. She is a tireless worker. She is the spearhead behind the success that the Libertarian Party has had in the last several years as our development director at the national headquarters. Tarda Sisto, welcome. How you doing?
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you've had a rough couple days, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. It's been not my best week. I am COVID positive right now, and I'm on the upswing. But it's this is why I asked if we could tape a little bit early, because I don't last very long.
Yeah. So people don't know that Tara is tireless. She is going to several events. How often do you travel a month?
Oh, last year was a pretty extensive year. I've been traveling through the entire COVID pandemic. I was part of the 2020 convention planning and execution. So I was there. I was one of three staff on the ground, myself, Kara Schultz, and Nick Dunbar. Um, I did several of the trainings around the country. I was in Virginia, the candidate and affiliate trainings that Kara Schultz organized, which I'm very proud to have been a part of. But I did Virginia, I did Utah. I have been out to California for their training as well. I would have liked to have gotten to more, but I did Freedom Fest. I have been to all of the LNC meetings that are quarterly when they happen, and I just came back from Hawaii where we were doing an evaluation for the Frontier Project, and I got to tell you, Hawaii's restrictions are really intense. I had to update. I do want to say that I am vaccinated. I made that choice for myself. I made it late too, but I am vaccinated, and I had to upload my medical records to a state-sponsored website and show my ID and this passport everywhere I went. It's quite, you can't move from one store to the next. Every restaurant you eat in. I tried to go to a food court with my son at the mall and needed to show it. But it did not prevent me from getting COVID.
No.
Passports did not prevent me from getting COVID. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of traveling, and I've tried to keep myself safe. But also, I think it's really important that we continue to live our lives in this pandemic.
Sure, and it's important that I mean, I'm not a proponent of passports or anything like that, or even the mandates that have been going down. But take this seriously. It's especially this Omicron. It's not as deadly. I will say there are people dying in droves. The problem is that it's so pervasive right now that a lower death count on the variant doesn't mean much when many more people are getting sick from it. So it's definitely worth taking seriously and acknowledging the danger that comes with it. But you're right, we do have to live our lives. We can't 2 more weeks to flatten the curve. I mean, we're well past that. Yeah. So
yeah, no, I had a lot of concerns about a vaccine coming out, Operation Warp Speed under Donald Trump. That was pretty terrifying, and I'm in my last childbearing years, so not to say that I am going to have a child, but if I wanted to have a child, I wanted to leave that option open, and I wanted to understand the science a little bit. And you can call me crazy for that, but that's my personal dilemma that I was struggling with for a while. But
no, I've heard many women talk about that, and that's a legit concern, especially something that came out fairly quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's a legit concern, and it should be left to people to make that decision for themselves. I had another friend, one of the co-hosts of this show, that just went through about a code that she's reluctant to get the vaccine because of perhaps there is an issue with pregnancies and things like that. So I this is a personal decision, and as much as I harp on the government trying to make inroads on things like abortion, we should have bodily autonomy when it comes to the decision of what goes in and comes out of our bodies. So,
I will say that I do think the fact that I was vaccinated uh, helped shorten the severity of the symptoms that I got. I mean, 4 days ago, I was on the floor. I could not move. I
mhm.
I was really scared. Um, and my boss, Tyler Harris, the next day he spoke to me. He was like, I was really worried the next conversation we were going to have was you in the hospital.
Yeah.
Um, I was really scared, but slowly I've been on the uptick a couple days. I know people within this party who went weeks and months uh,
Yeah.
with, you know, the aftermath of getting COVID, and they're still dealing with long COVID. And
Hmm.
so I feel really fortunate that I am on the mend, and I have a good support system around me in my hometown where I live, and so I feel pretty fortunate.
Well, I mean, excellent. So let's get a little bit deeper into who you are. So
Sure.
tell people about your background, where you live, and what you do outside of the Libertarian Party.
I am what you would call a bona fide masshole. Uh,
Ah,
I'm fourth generation Bostonian, which means I come with a lot of sass. I was a first generation college student. Um, I was very active in college. Um, I was elected student trustee of my university and got to sit on the board of my university with 20 other people appointed by the governor, and one student from each of the 5 university campuses at the University of Massachusetts. So that really opened up a lot of doors for me. Um, one door that it did open up for me is I ended up becoming a research assistant for a gentleman by the name of Parag O'Malley, who is an unsung hero in this world. He negotiated the Good Friday Agreement of Northern Ireland, and I was very fortunate to be a research assistant under him for 2.5 years, where he took me to Kosovo to help in a project called the Forum for Cities in Transition, which I'm so excited to tell you about because it's still a project that exists. It's a really important project, and I personally think it's a very libertarian project, although it's not affiliated with the Libertarian Party. But what the Forum for Cities in Transition does is it brings divided cities in conflict together to talk about how to get a municipality up and running again in the middle of conflict. What they do is they forcibly leave the state actors out of participating. Top state politicians not allowed to participate. And they focus on the practitioners on the ground.
that's
Who's
awesome.
running the water? Who's running the transportation? Who's running the education system? Because conflict is static. The aftermath of conflict, regardless of culture, you are going to need the same services to reinvigorate life again. And they brought places like Northern Ireland and Cape Town, South Africa, and Haifa and Kaduna, Nigeria, and South Sudan, and all these Cyprus, all these high conflict spaces together. And the idea is that places like Northern Ireland and Cape Town, South Africa, that are further along in the reconciliation process, could help mentor these practitioners through the processes that they're struggling with. And my role was working with the youth in Kosovo at the time of the conflict. So the youth weren't youth anymore. They were like 30, 35 years old, but
Yeah.
they were 6 and 7 at the time of conflict. So, reconciliation is generational quite often. And so these now young adults were innocent in the conflict, but there's a conditioning that occurs to continue to hate your enemies. especially when you have been victimized yourself and you've seen your family be victimized. Both sides of that conflict had youth leaders that had stories, really important stories. So I did that. Really fantastic opportunity for me. I was able to sponsor a refugee from Kosovo coming over to America. She's thriving here. She works for MIT. And I came to the liberty movement through other parties originally, and we all have our walk with liberty. It's kind of like if you're religious, your walk with Christ or whatever.
Yeah.
Not everybody's religious, but there's a common theme there. We all come in through a different door. I was raised in Massachusetts, so obviously I was raised by Democrats in a large portion, although Mitt Romney was governor here for a good portion of time in my young adulthood. But I worked with the Democrats, and in 2016, I was working at Harvard Kennedy School of Government running a program called the Future of Diplomacy Project when the election happened. And that was a wild time. But after the election happened and everybody was walking around like it was nuclear fallout here in Massachusetts, I did not want to put on my pink pussy hat and march the streets and resist. I really felt like that was not the right direction to go for me. I really wanted to understand. I was not a fan of Hillary Clinton. I tried to get on board, but the more I read, the more uncomfortable I was. It was a challenging time for America. But I wanted to understand why people voted for Donald Trump. And I had the opportunity because a longtime dear friend of mine decided to run for Congress as a Republican in 2018, and I ran his campaign. And so I got to sit and talk to people. I love to find out why people think the way they do. I don't like to just argue with people for the sake of argument. I think it's really important to understand their perspective. But in that time that I was running that, he was a libertarian-minded candidate, very much so. He became very good friends with Dan Fishman, who at the time was running for state auditor in Massachusetts. Dan, I will highlight, was the first libertarian to ever get the endorsement of the Boston Globe for a third party, and I'm very proud of him for that. But we worked very well together. When you're on the campaign trail and candidates can be supportive of each other, they do take that opportunity. And so Dan did not win state auditor, although he should have. But he did become a leader of the Libertarian Party for some time, and he asked if I would join him. And after some understanding, I said, okay, I'll throw my hat in the ring. So my next step was to interview with the then chairman, Nick Sarwark. So I drove up to Manchester, New Hampshire, which is only about 45 minutes for me. Actually, it's about an hour and 45 minutes. 45 minutes to the border in New Hampshire. And I had a 3.5-hour interview with Nick Sarwark. And we talked about everything under the sun. And then he put me forward. He thought I would be good for the job, and here I am.
And good for the job you have been.
Thank you.
So, talk about some of the successes of the Libertarian Party the last couple of years.
We have had the best fundraising years, second and third highest fundraising years in party history that I can find. Nobody can provide me any better data. Data is something that we've been trying to get better and better at every year in the party. Our highest grossing year was 2016 when Gary Johnson was running, and the duopoly was a giant dumpster fire. Not to say that it's not now, but it was really rough in 2016.
Yeah.
So yeah, our 2020 was our second highest grossing year. 2021 was our highest non-presidential election cycle year, and we just about matched 2020's revenue, which I'm really, really proud of, because we hadn't even come close in our comparable years, 2017 and 2013. They were dismal. So this was it was really something to be proud of, and I can't take full credit for it. I was given an opportunity to build a team that was ready to work and super excited to be vocal about libertarianism. And I was hired not because of my passionate liberty background. I was hired because I have a professional grant writing certificate, and I had done years of fundraising for universities and candidates and things like that. And so what I brought to the team was an operational sense of fundraising and an operational knowledge of fundraising. And so that, coupled with the beautiful writers I had on staff, Becca Congdon and Chris Clements, we were able to do some fantastic things. And later, Drew Ria, who is still on my team, and I'm really excited. He's fantastic. And I had great executive directors to look up to. I loved working for Dan. Dan supported all the things that I wanted to test out. And Tyler, he's so smart and so level-headed, and to have that kind of support, to help expand my diversity of thought, of possibilities, and also support and encourage me to take risks, that really played a huge part in our success.
Yeah, we love Dan here. Dan's a frequent contributor to the Deep Dive, and one of the best voices of liberty. Like, I mean, he'll just drop a soliloquy on liberty, and he did something at the end of the online convention when we nominated Joe. He spoke for it was like 30 seconds, and at the end I was like, where did that come from?
He used to be a radio show host here in Boston.
Yeah.
We have a radio station called WRKO, which is pretty famous. We've had a lot of Dr. Lawrence Schlesinger and Jeff Katz and all these big time radio hosts, and Dan Fishman was one of them. He's not a nobody.
No, Dan is fantastic, and every time I talk with Dan, I feel enriched and better for it. So
we don't always agree. Dan and I do not always agree, and we have some really entrenched debates. But one thing I can say is we always come out of it with a lot of respect for one another, even though we have differences. Yeah,
exactly. And Tyler's fantastic. I mean, he's such. He looks.
He's a wreck.
He looks like he was dropped from the Civil War, right into it. Every time I see him, I think of Ashoka and Farewell, that song from the Ken Burns miniseries.
He has this Mr. Rogers sweater that he wears.
Yes.
That I just love. Every time he wears it, I'm just like, yay.
Tyler is great. So what is the fundraising that we've done? What has that meant to the other departments within the LP?
Well, we wouldn't have been able to do the candidate trainings without substantial fundraising. We can't run the Frontier Project without fundraising. We cannot have ballot access canvassers on the ground without fundraising. So much of what we do relies on our ability to bring in revenue, to fight legal battles. We've had some successes in Maine, and we just had a backslide in Georgia, but that was an initial win for us. And we need the legal team to go out and fight those battles. And so, we paid off the building fund. We now own our property in Alexandria, right outside the DC area. those are opportunity. We're growing. We're a growing party, and I don't think anybody realizes how small our team is. We've got like a dozen people working for national, and quite a few of them are part-timers who are giving us like the friends and family rate to work for the party. We are really trying to do a tremendous amount with very little. And we know that the Democrats and the Republicans have incredibly over-bloated fundraising, so they can make all the things happen, and we really have to be really keen on the opportunities that we can capitalize on and be very focused on driving towards those specific goals. And I feel really, really proud to play a part in it. Not only did I fundraise for ballot access, but I've been on the ground driving petitions to city halls and in Maine and Rhode Island in 2020. And I was part of the debate, getting on the debate stage effort that we had in 2020, which we weren't successful in, but we did get closer than we've ever gotten before.
And the interesting thing is that we just recently saw that the GOP has gotten out of messaging that they're going to get out of the debate game, at least the CPD, and that leaves a opening for organization that you've been involved with.
Yeah. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be part of the Committee on American Debates coming together, and that was a nonpartisan effort. It was a lot of really hard work to put that together, and hopefully we'll be able to move that needle forward in the future. And I don't know what's going to happen with the Republicans. What I do know is that as we become more aggressive and fight for what we want, and as the Democrats continue to talk about impairing voter rights and free and fair elections, we have to be consistently saying free and fair elections include putting ballot access candidates on the debate stage.
Yeah.
And part of that is being an activist. There's room for activism, but you also have to have somebody at the table doing the negotiations while that activism is taking place. And that's a really important part that I think gets missed in activism. Often people get really, really angry about things, and they just want to protest. They want to hold these demonstrations, and those demonstrations have real power, but their power is amplified so much when you have somebody who is measured and somebody who understands all the complexities to be able to sit at the table and make your case for you, and have a reasonable dialogue with people who many would consider the enemy.
Yeah. I think the big point is that the ability for our staff to have been professionalized. I think one of the things that we lost in 2016 is that we didn't have a really huge staff at that point. And we weren't able to capitalize on all that disaffected voters that came out of 2016. Angry that Donald Trump won, angry that Hillary Clinton was the chosen nominee of the Democratic Party, and we didn't have that group there to capitalize on those disaffected people. And now we did, and that, I think, the sustainability of what we did in 2020 to 2021 is just kind of a testament to the professionalism. And when we get to those points where we are, negotiating for our place at the table, that we've got the people there to do it. And I think that's the main that's the main difference between where we were in 2016 and where we are now. And it's people like you that have joined the party and driven it to a professional place. as far as, development and growth and membership, all of that stuff, just working hand in hand to keep the stoke the fire of liberty.
Thank you. I would say that for me, coming into the Libertarian Party was about recognizing that the duopoly was doing real damage to the country. Having worked in conflict zones, I saw that the news media that had taken their corners and picked their sides, they were turning every issue alongside with the parties themselves of making every issue a black and white issue. And I'm not saying that like divided on racial lines, we could easily replace blue and red with those colors. But I would say that for me, I don't believe that any answer is ever black or white. I think that solutions are found in the gray space. And the gray space is the most important place. And those shades of gray are going to differ all over the country. Those shades of gray are not going to be the same in Utah or than Florida or, Texas versus New Hampshire. There's going to be very different ways that solutions can be found. And so I'm always the biggest fan of localizing the discussions to the people on the ground and empowering them to make the best decisions for themselves. So that's why liberty resonated with me. And really, my goal the entire time I've worked for the party is to make us viable and help present a more viable party to the public, as well as the duopoly, so that they take us seriously. And Dave, we carried the margin in the swing states in 2020. That's a big deal. The fact that, please excuse me, I've got COVID. The fact that we did that means that we matter. We're a major player, whether they like it or not. And that is great news, but it also means that we have enemies. We have people actively trying to make us impotent so that we are irrelevant in the next cycle and they can take aim. So, viability is the goal, but with more viability comes new challenges that we have to be prepared for.
Sure. We're kind of in that, I hate to use the term sweet spot. We're in that sweet spot of we're big enough to cause the consternation of properly, but we're also small enough that a few bad actors can really, throw a log in the gears of the party. Talk a little bit about some of the great stuff. I mean, you mentioned Frontier Project, you mentioned the training. So talk about some of the great things that's going on the Libertarian Party, that the projects that you're working on and other people are working on.
Oh my gosh, my favorite project that I'm working on right now is something that I've tried to get off the ground since my first month here in office. My background is in academia. I've been pulling together policymakers and educators for 20 years now to talk about the solutions that are possible. And that's kind of where my heart is. And I have to think back at Bernie Sanders. Let me give Bernie Sanders a minute here. He galvanized a lot of people, a lot of young people. And, he may not have libertarian solutions, but he certainly articulated American problems very, very well. Yes. And so that is how he corralled those people. But there was not a libertarian solution on the table for those problems. And I think part of that is that there's not libertarian voices in the classrooms that are helping students understand the different dynamics of libertarianism, and helping them understand the real prize that we have as Americans of freedom, and how delicate and fragile that is, and how we need to really protect it. I turned 18 2 months before September 11th, 2001, and I watched this country change dramatically from growing up in it. So anyway, what the project that I am most excited about right now is the Association of Libertarian Educators.
Yeah.
It is a funded project. We got a donor to give a maximum contribution. By the way, the maximum contribution an individual can give for the general fund is $36,500 at the moment. So I was able to
hint for anybody out there watching.
And you can go to lp.org/donate if you're interested. I was able to work with a donor to get that funded, and we've since raised about 40 grand to put this the first convocation of the Association of Libertarian Educators on, and it's moving, it's coming together, and it's really exciting to be a part of that, and I think it gives longevity for a pipeline into the party to help us continually grow. So I'm very, very proud of that right now. That's what I'm working on. Most people know convention is coming up, and things are going to get a little heated on the way up to convention, but convention's a really big deal for the party. We are looking at 2 new states for the Frontier Project, and I'm not going to give all those nuts and bolts away, all those sweet treats away. You can get Apollo Pizzell on your show to talk a little bit more about the Frontier Project and how he runs things. But those are really exciting. I know Kara Scholes is planning a really dense training for those individuals that attend convention, that want to be trained deeper in the acts of campaigning and into the strategies of campaigning and becoming a real political operative. This is not for the weak stomached, and there's a lot to know, and best to be armed with that information before you make all the mistakes. Let us have made the mistakes for you, and those are training new operatives and working with Bill Redpath for ballot access right now. I work very closely with Bill Redpath. Those are really, really exciting things that I get to be a part of, and I really feel like they are so impactful to not just this party, but this country.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really proud of those things.
Excellent. So you're doing all these great things at headquarters, but you've also been met with controversy over the last few weeks, months, a couple months now. Let's go back to day before Christmas Eve. An email rolls into the LNC list by at-large Representative Joshua Smith calling for your termination.
It's true.
Yeah. Now,
well, I think it's important to touch on a little bit of I've really stayed in the background for most of my job. I'm not out there making big statements. I'm working with people one-on-one. One of the things I wanted to share with you about what I've been working on is I've been working directly with state affiliates to try to build individual fundraising strategies for them. And it's moving slowly. I'm one individual, and I've had a lot of travel in the last year, but I've been working with Alaska, California, Florida, New Mexico, New York, Georgia. I've been working with these state parties to try to understand what their goals are and how to operationalize their fundraising strategies so they can be more substantial in their states. And that's something I'm really proud of. Nobody asked me to do that. That was not a directive from the board. That was just something I feel that is important for us to do, is build the infrastructure of this party for like something solid, that there can be a solid structure and foundation to keep us moving. But one thing that occurred in the last 6 months was I joined the state committee of my state affiliate, the Libertarian Association of Massachusetts, LAMA. And this has been done.
That's the best name of a state affiliate, by the way.
Isn't it great?
Makes me think of Monty Python.
I think they try to stay warm and cuddly, the state committee members, but it doesn't always get perceived that way.
Sure.
As with most libertarians, we're a prickly bunch of porcupines. We look really cute until you try to come at us, and then the quills go up.
That's right.
And anyway, so I had a pretty good relationship with the members of the state committee that existed, and they had some people resign, and we spoke a little bit about it, and I really wanted to get in there and help. We talked about some of the problems that were happening, and I have a lot of political operational experience that I thought I could bring to the state party, and so I was nominated and accepted the nomination and voted in by the state party. So I am now an officially recognized of the state party. And this is not a new thing that national staff do. Some of you may know Bob Johnston, who was the chair of Maryland for many years and worked for national, and Nick Dunbar, who was the chair of Virginia. My colleague Becca Congdon is the vice chair in Texas. Gideon Oakes used to be our graphic designer and publications editor. He was the chair of South Dakota. This is not a new thing. I did not do something that was completely out of the realm of acceptability. But I got in at a pretty tough time for the state party. There's a lot going on here, and so I came in to try to do what I could.
So what is your official role with the LAMA?
I just sit on the state committee. I do assist in a lot of membership stuff. I try to assist in communications, but I'm really just I'm trying to be a Jill of all trades. I stay away from fundraising specifically because we have a mandate at national that if we provide for one state, we have to provide for all of the affiliates. And so I'm very mindful of boundaries that I need to maintain. I can't go out and start raising money directly for Massachusetts. But I try to give my experience with a lot of other areas. As we were overhauling the website at the time, I've been trying to work towards getting us on Civi CRM, because I think that's really important. That's where our freshest, most hygienic data lives right now, and so I want us to migrate towards that, and that's what I'm doing.
So back to the email. We get the email stating that Josh wants you terminated, which is for inside baseball, that can't happen. The LNC can't just terminate a contract like that. It's completely improper for someone to make that.
I do have an employment agreement.
Yes, an employment agreement, all that stuff. But first off, it was on Christmas Eve, man. I mean, what kind of person puts an email out like that on Christmas Eve?
I don't know what kind of person does that. What I do know is that I'm a mother, and my mother was in town. I had not seen her for almost a year, and my partner's sister and her family were in town, and we were in the middle of Christmas. So it was a difficult time for me to respond to anything work. But I assumed that LNC members who celebrate the Christmas holiday would be working to make Christmas magical for their families. So I was really surprised to see the email, and I was very appreciative that the chair immediately took it down and deemed it inappropriate. So
Completely inappropriate. Yeah. So one of the things that has led to is that Josh Smith was recently censured by the board. Currently is now kind of waving that around as a red badge of courage. Do you think that was enough?
Well, I mean, he's still calling for my termination, so I don't know. It's up to the board to determine what's enough. For me, I have to think about myself and how this is affecting my health. That the morning after that vote, I was on the floor with COVID. So, that stress, although it didn't give me COVID, it probably didn't help where I ended up the next morning. And so I have to think about that. There's something that I've noticed about working for this party the last 2 years. When you enter into a leadership title of any kind at any level, that's when the pitchforks start coming for you.
Oh, yeah.
The data that I've seen has shown that libertarians do not lean more left or more right. It actually depends on what their establishment dictates for them, and they push back against that establishment. And so libertarians are fundamentally anti-establishment. And so when you become a leader, you instantly become part of this conspiracy theory, oh my gosh, trying to take over the world kind of narrative. And, a lot of times those leaders are just trying to make the best decisions they can for the group with the facts that they have available to them at the time.
Not only the facts, but the people available to them. Like that was one of the big things when I was state chair. Just getting people to show up and do stuff rather than sitting in from their computers. Because that was, I mean, you got plenty of complaints. You just didn't get the people to show up to actually pitch in to do the work. That was the big thing that I found as a leader was, yeah, feel free to complain, but if you're not putting in any sweat equity into the party, then I'm going to give your complaints the weight that they deserve.
I think there's no shortage of podcasters or comedians that want to just trash people left and right and don't actually get on the ground and do the hard work. There's a lot of people that are more about driving content. And you're a podcaster. I know, Dave, no offense to you, but I think you talk about some really critical issues.
I get it, yeah.
There's a lot of podcasters out there that, just want to say the most provocative things, to be as insulting as possible, to be as, sometimes clownish as possible, to attract as much attention to themselves so that they have viewership, so that they can get money from their YouTubes, they can get money from their Parler accounts, whatever. It is really a hindrance to the party. I mean, free speech is super important, but I think you're spot on about the sweat equity and rolling up your sleeves and organizing stuff in the background. It's not a glamorous, you don't become a celebrity in the background, but you become a doer. You get a lot of stuff done. And like I said earlier, those people that want to challenge the system in a way that is just like screaming at the top of their lungs, be it outside some state entity or on their podcast. You also have to have those practical people that are able to sit at the table and move the needle forward in the right places. So there's a place for both of them. However, I think that some of these podcasters that I've seen, and including members of the leadership team of the Mises Caucus, they say things that are untrue and are really vitriol, and become harassing towards good people trying to do good work in this party. And I think, there are many people in the Mises Caucus that are good people. I've had a lot of good conversations. It's just a conduit. Some of them are Austrian economics wonks or philosophy nerds. And I studied classical political theory at Oxford. So like I understand getting into like the philosophy of it all and getting really excited about that, and feeling really attached to that. But there is this overarching hostility directed at those in leadership positions, making leadership decisions, coming out of that specific caucus.
And a lot of it's the leadership of the caucus. That's the problem. Like I work with our folks here in West Virginia. West Virginia has a majority Mises group within the state, and I work with all of them. I give counsel to whoever wants counsel because of my experience, and I've never had an issue with them. It's the leadership and those people that are seen as national leaders of the movement that I don't think have the best of intentions when it comes to the political party.
We don't know what their intentions are. Those intentions are not clear. But when you decide you're going to hashtag takeover because you don't like where things are at, there's 50 years worth of people that have been working hard to build what we have.
Yep.
And you're spitting on them by going along with that. You're essentially saying that all your hard work is garbage to me, and that's not, a lot of those people that they're talking about are donors that I've built really strong relationships in this party with. And, I feel very defensive of those individuals that have been giving to this party year after year after year, helping us secure ballot access, helping us run our conventions, helping us do the things that make us the third largest political party in America. I understand people are not happy with where we are, but I think the history of where we come from is really important to understand when making those judgments.
Yeah.
So
I mean, for me in this whole thing, that the main complaint that we've received from them is communications. Like they don't like our messaging.
David, it's not a political party's job to do messaging. If you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, the party itself is not messaging. As I said before, there's a lot of gray space where solutions can be had for libertarians. And by having this message that is a national federal message, we have pigeonholed our candidates that are trying to find solutions in their spaces that work for them. it's the candidates and the elected officials that speak on behalf of a political party. And it's our job to amplify those voices as they speak about liberty issues. And so I've been trying to give a lot of space to our candidates that are running in the years that I've been here. I've been trying to help amplify who they are to our national audience so that we can have more successful elections. Because again, we have to get at the table to make those decisions, to be a part of those conversations where those policies are enacted. But by saying we have a platform and we can make that known, we should make that known. But and we have a Becca Congdon, who used to work in my department, now is our interim communications director. I think she has an incredible liberty voice. And she speaks. She's been doing these like long form pieces that really amplify where things have gone wrong and where we can improve. But it's all about going back to the solution-oriented conversations. It's not just about fighting the system. It's about fixing the system.
Yeah, because I mean, screaming at the clouds is not going to do us any good if we don't have any solutions to offer to and people in the game to actually negotiate those solutions. There's no gain for us just being a messaging organization, and we can also talk about the style of communication we've seen from folks within that side of the movement, the quality of that communication that really scares the hell out of me when I see it come out.
Well, so one thing that in Massachusetts is a really big deal for us, and I know that this is a problem in New Hampshire as well, because New Hampshire is a very close state to us. I mean, we share the same radio frequencies and we share the same TV space. So when their political campaigns are running, we get all their ads, and vice versa. So it's a small media market we live in up here. But I want to touch on the Free State Project for a minute, because I think that's really important to understand. A lot of libertarians think that the Free State Project is a libertarian initiative, and it's not. It's not a project that has any association with the Libertarian Party directly at the national level. I can tell you there are spaces that we overlap, but such as Freedom Fest. I know a lot of libertarians go to Pork Fest, but what I have come to conclude about the Free State Project is that they ran over 30 candidates in the 2020 election cycle, and every single one of them was a Republican. And so what's important for us to maintain through all of this turmoil is that we are a hyper-partisan organization. We are a political party trying to establish this political party. Right. And so as they want to influence us towards supporting more Republican-leaning candidates, it's really important for us to dig our heels in the ground and say, no, we're here for the libertarian candidates. That's what matters to us, because we are a viable party, and you will recognize us as something other than the duopoly.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your role with Llama, there was a controversy that happened about 2 weeks ago now. There was a board meeting where several members of the party were kicked out. Can you kind of describe what happened with that party or that meeting?
Yeah, I was aware that the meeting was taking place. I did not participate in the vote. I did advocate for people to not be treated like a monolith. However, the decision came down to a ruling of the chair, and the state party had enough votes to support that ruling. And so I am of the opinion that elections have consequences, and we need to accept the reality of those consequences. And I have reached out to some of the people who have been removed and heard what they had to say, and I'm going to do my best to try to unify the state party once again. But when you have a larger organization coming in with a takeover strategy, and I'm not saying that there are not concerns to be had with the state party. I think all the state parties across the country have shortcomings that we're all trying to work through. I think that, there's a lot of lack of structure that exists within our state affiliates that's trying to be called together by a few people who do a lot. I think that those concerns are important to acknowledge, but I also, when you have an outside group pushing this narrative of takeover, and you see how that's playing out across the country. I mean, I'm hearing stories, we know New Hampshire and Delaware and Arizona now, and there's so many, Pennsylvania, and there's so many different challenges that are coming from across the country. Ashley Shade, who is an elected libertarian, she felt very protective. A lot of these divisions are coming down to leaders who are trying to be protective of this organization. I did have Mises members in conversation telling me that we should be supporting liberty-leaning Republicans in our Slack chat, and that's not an acceptable thing to say. No. In Massachusetts, we were having really difficult discussions on race. We had an individual who had used very racist language towards a state committee member. We had a couple of them actually who continued to spew that, and I came in the middle of that to the state party, and I was trying to really understand what was happening. But what I saw was an African American state committee member being targeted, and I cannot allow that in my state. We have very strict laws here in Massachusetts on hate speech. My fiduciary responsibility to the party as a state committee member has to put a stop to that right away.
Well, it's not just racist. I mean, there was transphobic comments and all that stuff. Of course, Ashley is one of my favorite people in this party. I love Ashley, and seeing what she went through almost on the daily it's just awful.
I really try to take my personal feelings about people out of the equation. I don't have negative thoughts or feelings about Ashley in any way, shape, or form. She is an elected libertarian now, and that should matter because we have so few of them. She was elected the state chair at last year's convention. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that. There's a lot of what I see from the leadership of this caucus, both in Llama and through the national stage, is a lot of cannibalism of other libertarians. They spend a lot of their time trying to eat our own tribe and destroy us, as opposed to sitting down and working with us. I don't agree with everybody. I had a really heated debate with a member of Llama about critical race theory. I'm not going to agree with everybody. I personally think it's about darn time that the state owned up to some of the crap that they've been doing to African Americans over the years, and I think that's a very libertarian concept. Other people have differences of opinion on that. They tie it to socialism or Marxism or whatever. I don't hate those people. We have have disagreements. That's healthy political dialogue. But when you start targeting people, when you start harassing and trying to just destroy someone publicly, when you're actively provoking them by hurling racial or transphobic comments at them, I wouldn't repeat anything that was said, because it's honestly it's garbage. But it's not who we want the party to be, and libertarians are here for all the liberties of people, not the ones that you agree with.
Yeah.
So I feel where Ashley was at. I have a lot of empathy for every member of the state committee, and I have empathy for the people who signed that petition not knowing that they were being led into this toxic mess by the Mises Caucus. I think there are many members of the state committee or of the state party, Llama, that had no affiliation and just were really concerned about not having their concerns heard from the state party, and that's legitimate.
Yeah.
That being said, we have a convention scheduled in Massachusetts for April 23rd, and the opportunity for that election to reelect new leadership was there, but Mises insisted that it needed to happen immediately. And one thing that I think is important to mention is that while Josh Smith was launching his email on Christmas Eve, that leadership of the Mises Caucus in Massachusetts was at the same time trying to provoke the state committee members on this petition on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. They
were actively coming in and trying to rile up at the exact same time. So this all was a coordinated tactic. And it's not lost on me. I'm a political operative. This stuff is going to happen. But I'm not stupid either. And I take it for what it is. It's toxic garbage. And it doesn't help this party gain viability in any way.
So, I mean, that's, I think the logical follow-on question is, what is we spent so much of the last year, depending on where you're at, or last several years, in the case of Pennsylvania, fighting this pitched battle about, taking over, influencing the party. I get that, but what is the impact on the party itself? While we're spending so many, man hours and woman hours, our headspace involved in this fight. Imagine what we could have been doing, going to your city council meeting to lobby on behalf of a liberty project, or going to a school board, or going to
they're doing that too. They're doing that too. But I think it comes back down to, you got to play this line where, yes, you're fighting the system, but you've also got to be at the table. You got to be kind enough to get to the table where the decisions are actually being made, so that you can make change in those decisions. It all comes back to that proper balance from where I sit. It is demoralizing to know that we've had these really heightened successful years of fundraising, and we've done all these incredible projects, and we've had 50 state ballot access in the middle of a pandemic, and all anybody can talk about is these culture wars. It's incredibly demoralizing as a staff member, and we've had staff members walk away because it feels like a futile effort. It doesn't matter how hard we work. It doesn't matter if we put in 80, 90 hours a week, which we do regularly, because at the end of the day, the Twitter trolls and the podcast clowns are going to be the ones writing the narrative, which is why I wanted to come on and talk with you, Dave, because that can't be the only narrative. There's so much more to this party than that. And I want to be here for that. I didn't put all this time and energy. I haven't, convinced our donors that we're worth investing in to let that be the way it goes. And I worry, I will say, I had a member of the National Mises Caucus leadership tell me that I would be fired as soon as Mises took over. And he said it in front of a donor, a very substantial donor. And that individual, the donor said, I think that's not a good idea. I think the donors wouldn't appreciate it. And he explicitly said to that individual, F your donors, we'll get new ones. What it means to the party, I think there's an effort to drive away our donorship. I think it is an effective way of driving away our donorship. And money is the mother's milk of politics. And we can cry all day about how, it shouldn't be this expensive to live in the world. But this is the world we live in. And you can't fight for capitalism in all spaces and then not participate in the need for money to make things move. And that is my fear, is that we're going to drive away the donorship with the chaos, and that is going to impair our viability, as it's going to impair our candidates, and that's my concern.
Do you think I think that effort's already underway. So on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire decides to make a tweet saying Black people in America get special access to essential drugs, receive federal funding due to race, and first in line for every college and every job. America isn't in debt to Black people. If anything, it's the other way around. To me, especially the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, Jeremy Kauffman has been involved in their Twitter account and has sent just awful stuff. I mean, there's been stuff from Libertarian Party of Kentucky that has been embarrassing as well. Do you feel that this is a concerted effort to really kind of drive away people and donors from the Libertarian Party to make it weaker?
Personally, I think so I've only met Jeremy once. He actually, him and the chair of New Hampshire, the current sitting chair, they came to the Christmas party we hosted here in Boston when the LNC was meeting here. And I did not have a bad experience communicating with them. I felt, and Ashley also spoke very frankly with them. Ashley Shade spoke very frankly with them. And, I walked up and had a good conversation. I think Whitney had a really good conversation as well. I think, there was a lot of trying to understand each other that was happening. I think that New Hampshire has the Free State Project really running the show up there, in my opinion. I think that the Free State Project is a detriment to this party. And although New Hampshire is considered the freest state in America, I can tell you that it is it's at a crossroads right now of the direction that it wants to go. The Trump establishment is there. New Hampshire is the first presidential primary state, which makes it a super political hotspot. It's also a swing state. And, it's where it all starts. Trump has former campaign managers that live up there, and I know that Steve Bannon's been carousing the border between Massachusetts and I don't know what is happening with LP New Hampshire, and why they feel the need to say these things, but I do know that it affects our candidates. I do know that it is not a liberty message, and you know, we are a decentralized organization. We try to be a decentralized organization, and we try to let states, contrary to what Josh did in his email, I think the National Party really tries to let states work their stuff out on their own and just be here to be supportive of that process existing. So there will be a new election, and you know, it's up to New Hampshire LP members to decide how they want to portray themselves. But it does have an impact on the national conversation for liberty, and it does drive away some really good people. You know, if you have a small group of people and you're trying to grow that party, if you're leaving in these toxic entities to write the narrative, it leaves less oxygen in the room for all the other good people who would just as well turn their back and go another way because they don't want to be associated with that toxicity. So I worry about those narratives. I'm not on Twitter. I mean, I am, but I'm more or less use it as a tool to curate my news, and I don't follow LP New Hampshire, or Kentucky or any of the state parties, because I let communications do their job and I focus on fundraising. But there's blowback. There's definite blowback. We answer the info inbox and we see donors writing in very, very concerned, and candidates speaking up, being very upset about what's acceptable speech in the liberty movement. You know, yes, we fight for free speech, but should that free speech be toxic? That's a personal opinion, and I'm going to go with no for myself.
Absolutely. I can't imagine. I mean, I think that's where we separate ourselves, is that you're right. National and really even the state parties should not be in the game of messaging. That should be your candidates. That should be it could be your leaders in the state, but it should be, because when if you're a candidate running for Congress, or kind of running for your state house, or even a board of election, school board election, if your state party comes out and issues that tweet, suddenly you're having to answer that tweet because that's your party making that tweet. Now, if candidate A, let's say, I mean, let's go back to 2016, we had Augustus Saul Invictus. Stuff came out, but that really ended up just being Augustus, and it kind of involved the Florida party. But it didn't become a national issue for us because that was a candidate making those statements. You could disavow those.
No, but I know that candidates in Florida and elected officials and elected libertarians in Florida have been working really hard to try to, work back that trust that was lost when the party was represented that way.
Yeah.
I congratulate Jim Turney on his reelection this year. He's really had to work hard to build the trust in his community as a libertarian. That's another thing that we have to do as libertarians get elected, is they have to get reelected, and they have to earn the trust of those community members. And that trust can't be based on the fact that they just want to tear down all the systems. It has to be that they're working in the best interest of the population as a whole in the elected roles that they serve. And so my hope is that that we can start to that our state parties really start to focus on the elected officials, so that we can change policy towards a less regulated society and a less criminalized society, so that we can explore the full potential of freedom that is available.
Yeah. So you've been a warrior today. You're fighting through the COVID. We've done almost an hour and 15 minutes, actually over an hour and 15 minutes at this point.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. I've enjoyed the conversation, and every time you're talking, I'm thinking of other shows I could do with you, especially about education. I think education show would be absolutely fantastic. Get a couple of educators on and talk about how we move past the current system that we have to make education better for people in America. Conversations for other days.
I think there's members of the leadership team of the Association of Libertarian Educators that would love to have that conversation with you, and I would love to help facilitate that. I don't think I'm the best person to do that because I'm not an educator. I'm a convener. I like to bring people together because it's not just about my opinion. It's about the expertise that is out there coming together to talk about the solutions, and I'm happy to bring those voices together. So I would be happy to have one of those leadership members come on your show if you would have them, and they would be.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about or go into?
I mean, how long's your show?
Generally that show goes an hour and a half. I'm going to make a personal statement at the end, but
no, I mean, I think I just encourage people to keep investing in this party, because we are making huge headway, and the louder narrative may be the controversy that exists within the party, but the more important story is the roads that we are making to in this country to amplify libertarianism. I think that we have huge opportunities, and I don't know what's going to happen with the CPD. I'm going to be very interested in the debates in 2024, and that's really something that I think is going to be really interesting to watch. I also sit on the national board for Rank the Vote, which is an organization bringing ranked choice voting to states across the country. And I'm very proud of that. And I think election reform is really important. And it's time. As I talk to petitioners on the ground who are collecting signatures, what I consistently hear is that this country is hungry for something other than duopoly. And so, as libertarians, we have a really ripe opportunity to present a better option. And I hope that we can stop the internal conflict enough to demonstrate the potential that we have in the political sphere.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and
Thanks.
We'll look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Tara DeSisto, Development Director of the LP. Stay tuned in just a minute. I'll be giving my final thoughts on this interview and what's going on in the LP and a path forward. Again, visit our sponsor, the Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia, facebook.com/the Deep End Antiques. Travis Rednick, my close personal friend and co-host on the Thursday Night Hockey Show, runs that store. You can get great military surplus, lots of glassware. West Virginia is a big state for blown glass and things like that. If you ever ate on a Fiestaware plate, the headquarters of in the factory of Fiestaware is in the northern Panhandle, and so we've got tremendous stuff here in the state of West Virginia. So if you're interested in that stuff, take a drive out to Beckley, West Virginia. And check out a store or visit it online at facebook.com/deependantiques. But stay tuned in just a moment, and I will be giving my final thoughts. All right. Thanks everyone for watching this show. I really appreciate it. I did want to share some personal thoughts. And it's 36 hours after almost 36 hours after we conducted this interview. And I can't thank everyone enough who made comments tonight. Desiree Lindsay, 1218 official, Wyatt Breckenridge, Janice McKenzie. You all are rock stars. Craig Violette, you guys are rock stars. Thank you so much for contributing tonight. This show wouldn't be anything without you, and yeah, great contributions tonight. I'm, like I said at the beginning of the show, there are so many things in this world that I really want to talk about with my show when it comes to news, politics, pop culture, the things going on in Ukraine, the tremendous football game that we just had end right before the show started. There's so many things that we can talk about. But this is important. This is the future of the party that I am in and that I've made heavy investments in. I'm a lifetime member of the Libertarian Party. Um, did I get Wyatt's name wrong? I'm sorry, Wyatt. All right. I don't see his comment, so I can't fix it. Sorry, Wyatt. I apologize. Anyway, I'm generally a fairly averse to conflict kind of person. I don't like calling out people. But I've made heavy investment in the Libertarian Party, and I'm very concerned about the future of the Libertarian Party. My feeling is that the Libertarian Party should not be taken over. I've been pretty outspoken about that idea, and the reason why is what you just saw. Tara DeSisto, the development director of the party, is fantastic. She is I've heard people say that she has the best Rolodex in the liberty movement. I absolutely believe it. The stuff that she's done, and the stuff that under the leadership of both Dan Fishman, Tyler Harris, um, Nick Sarwark, Joe Bishop Henchman, and Whitney now. The professionalism that we're seeing from LPHQ has to be maintained for this party to move forward. And when you talk about why we should be getting rid of these people, you have to ask, what are the benchmarks of getting rid of these people? So, fundraising, uh, two of the three best years in our history, and sustained fundraising from a presidential year into an off presidential year. That's amazing. That's never been done before. We've seen presidential year highs, but we've never been able to sustain that into that next year. Um, Membership gains. We're doing great. The election of libertarians. We're now at 354 elected officials at least. I'm not sure how up to date the website is at this point, but 354 is listed on the website. Over 190 were elected in Pennsylvania alone in November. The message is getting out there. We're seeing people elected not just in Pennsylvania where they've got a cool maneuver that they can do. We're seeing people elected in West Virginia. We hadn't had elected officials for several years. Where the targets are. So we talked about Pennsylvania is doing great with getting elected officials. They're Kevin Gahn and that team, Jen Moore, are doing tremendous jobs there. Getting candidates elected and raising tons of money. When we talk about Massachusetts, another target at this point, another source of controversy. Ashley Shade, the recently former state chair, is an elected official. They elected another official in November. So we're seeing success. And at this point, you got to ask, well, what is the complaint? Why are we going after these people at LPHQ? And the thing that I hear the most is messaging. And we talked ad nauseum about messaging on the show. I, I will say that Tara is right. Messaging is not the purview of the National Party. When people say that, I say, well, tell me what is the Republican National Committee's position on COVID? And you can't tell me that. What is the Democratic National Committee's messaging on COVID? You can't tell me that. What are the Libertarian Party's beliefs on any issue? Well, generally, all you have to do is go look at the platform. You can apply the platform pretty much to any issue. But by making a national message, there's a good chance that we end up hamstringing our candidates. In fact, in 2016, the National Party put out a tweet from Augustus Saul Invictus, and it caused a crap storm. So, I mean, this is the thing that they're pushing as the reason why all this needs to be replaced. I'm sorry. I just don't see that messaging is the cause celeb that should cause the entire party to be destroyed. I'm going to call it like I see it. This is an effort to destroy the party so that the GOP can get us out of the way for 2024. They're trying to remove all the roadblocks that they perceive kept Donald Trump from winning in 2020. And so they're trying to put us in a position where we're so cannibalizing each other that we're going to lose ballot access in the states during 2022. And we're not going to be focused on getting ballot access for states in 2024. If you replace the entire national organization with some of these folks and, they're hyper focused on messaging, what is going to be paid into those funds? How much effort is going to be put into those funds? So, kill the thing about messaging. I think this is and I'm not saying that everybody that is involved in the Mises from top down is in on it. I'm just saying that the leadership of this group is in on it. And I want to call out a few individuals. And again, I'm very very risk or very conflict averse, but at this point we have to do it. I don't feel comfortable with just leaving this unsaid, and I think it needs to be out there. There are four. I call them the four horsemen of the apocalypse that have pervaded this party and have caused a majority of the issues within this party, either this year or in the last few years. The first one I'm going to call out is a guy named Jeremy Kauffman. It is very clear that this man is in the party with not good intentions. He has joined this party not to benefit the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. He's there to destroy it. And the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire continues to let him play his petty little racist games and get mad when we call them out on it. And, look, I'm not in Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. I don't get a say on who's in their state executive board. That's their decision. And I know that there's been issues there, but as long as they let him run that Twitter account, they're responsible for the issues that we have with the party. And all he's trying to do is turn the LPNH into an offshoot of the failed state project, and to make us Republican lackeys. And I'm not down with it. He needs to go. He's got to go. Second person, Joshua Smith. Look, the best thing I can say about this guy is he's an intellectual lightweight. There's a lot of worse things I can say about this guy. I mean, he cuddles up to Nazi apologists and racists just for subscribers to his podcast. If you're a racist and a Nazi apologist and you're out there watching this, don't subscribe. I don't want you. Get the fuck off. But not only does that, he uses the children as props to boost subscribers. He is not involved to help the party, but to drive money to his podcast empire. And his greed has obliterated any sense of a moral compass that he may have ever had. I'm not even sure about that. There are people who've known him far longer than I have that could tell me that. The best thing that could happen for the LNC is that he's not on it past Reno. Let him go do his thing. Third person, Karen Ann Harlows. She's just not a good person. Full disclosure, I supported her in 2018 for secretary, and she was really nice to me. And it was nice to hang out with her. But almost immediately when she got into that position of power within the LP, she became a bad person. And it was because if you look at the issues that happened within the party from 2018 until she was booted off the organization, um, there was a common denominator in all of the controversies, and all of the vitriol, and Karen Ann Harless was one of those sides. Always. And now that she's been removed from the LP, the LNC, she uses her podcast to harass and harangue members of the party, of the LNC, of the LP headquarters. Um, you know, she's always decried corruption, yet she's grifted from LP memorabilia that's in her possession. She's held herself out as a victim of misogyny many times. And then one recent meeting, she accused Ken Mollman, our vice chair, of growing a vagina for not voting her way, going her way on a vote. Which begs the question: what's the problem with having a vagina? Like I don't know. I mean, she doesn't make sense. And then she calls herself a whistleblower, and that coming from a person who has an actual legal background, it's kind of shocking to hear herself call herself that, because in no way does she ever meet the definition of a whistleblower. Again, the best thing that happened was that she was removed, and the best thing that can happen moving forward is to not put her back on the LNC, remove her from the Historical Preservation Committee, and remove the archives from her possession. And then finally, Michael Heiss, he fashions himself as the puppet master of this movement. He thinks he's the wizard behind the curtain, but I think he doesn't see the strings that are guiding him right now. He is being led by someone way above his pay grade, and he doesn't comprehend that he is or maybe he does. Maybe he is a willful pawn in this great game that the GOP is trying to concoct to destroy the party. But I can't just complain about these people and complain about what's going on. First off, it's not a monolith. I'm not saying that all Mises are bad. I said on the show that the Mises Caucus is I work with a lot of members of the Mises Caucus in West Virginia. They're not trying to do the dumb things. The messaging here is fine. They're hardworking. They're involved in the party. They show up to events. I have no problem. And that's what that's if you want to take over a party, that's how you do it. You show up and you do the work. You don't just show up in mass at convention time and then fuck off once the streamers come down. So like I said, I can't just complain. I can't just treat all Mises as this bad monolith. That leadership needs to be pruned. Um, uh, but for us, if you're watching this and you're like, well, we're kind of powerless, show up, show up, show up, show up, show up to your conventions, attend your conventions, of course. Bring a friend, bring your neighbors, bring people who want to see a party, a third option that will defend their freedoms and defend their allow them to live the life that they want to live, and be free. That's the first thing. You've got to do that. You've got to show up to these conventions and bring people with you. Um, uh, a lot of these conventions are electing delegates to the national convention. If they are running for a delegate, ask them some questions. What would you like to see done with LPHQ? And if it's anything less than maintaining the staff we have, then I can't say that you should vote for them. Or I would at least educate them as to the good things that the staff is doing, because they're doing plenty of good things. And honestly, be a delegate. The only way to ensure that your interests are represented in Reno is by being there, being a delegate. If you can be a delegate, if you have the financial means and you have the time to be able to get to Reno over Memorial Day weekend, please be a delegate, show up, and make your voice heard. That's the best way to ensure the future of the party. And then When you see bad behavior by members of leadership, state parties performing bad behavior, call it out. That's been very successful. Call out these people when they do the bad things. That bad tweet that happened on Martin Luther King Day was taken down because people were calling it out. Um, Hold the bad actors to account. And if you're in the Mises Caucus and people are doing bad things in your leadership, call them out, hold them accountable. The worst thing you can do is turn a blind eye, because then you are it. I hate to use guilt by association, but that's what happens when you turn a blind eye to bad behavior. You see it's what's happening with New Hampshire. You know, I can't say that everybody involved in LPNH is bad, but when they just turn a blind eye to Jeremy Kauffman, I can't help but say, hey, there's rot, and you guys are ignoring it. I think that maybe you are okay with it. Um, Within Mises, and this is something I would suggest. If within Mises, unlike many people in the group, again, my state is majority Mises. My hope is that the general membership begin asking questions of its leadership. How are your dollars being spent? Everybody in that group is giving money, whether it's $5, $25, whatever. They're giving money a lot of times monthly to this group, so they should get a full accounting of how their money is being spent. Um, Ask why this organization can't file timely FEC reports. Now, I get uh, thumbing your nose at the government is great. I don't have a problem with that. Um, you know the but the problem is, you're running a national. If you take over, you're running a national party, and if you're late with FEC reports, then it's big time. And if I know Michael Heiss isn't running for a national position, but those people who are running under the Mises banner will be in that responsibility, and the people that get hired, LPHQ, will be under that microscope and will have legal and fiduciary responsibility. So, yes, while I hate FEC reports and while I hate filing my taxes, if that is something I have to do to continue to be the third largest political party in the United States, then that's what I've got to do. I've got to be able to file that stuff timely. Um, the other thing, why did you abandon your co-founder, not respond to lawsuits, um, which now has led to a summary judgment? This could impact the money that I'm giving to you. These are concerning things. FEC can fine the Mises Caucus. So you're basically, if I'm giving the Mises Caucus money, I'm basically sending it right on to the FEC. If you're not responding to lawsuits, then my money is going to some guy in Idaho. If the takeover happens, will you work as hard raising money for the Libertarian Party, or will PAC fundraising still take priority? That's a big thing. I still don't trust whether, if the takeover happens, will people be directed to the PAC rather than to the national party to donate? Um, a- and finally, are you going to commit to ballot access in all 50 states in 2024? I mean, we're nothing if we're not running candidates, and we're nothing if we're not getting 50 state ballot access in 2024. And if you get access or answers to these questions, great. I'll be happy for it. I'd love to hear them. If you find yourself on the outside looking in, as many people who have asked questions in the past, come find me. You have a home here. We'll work together, and we'll move this party forward. If we have to pick up the pieces in 2026 or 24 or 26, we'll do it. We'll do it together. And all these people who've been commenting on this show tonight. Sorry, I've been posting them as I've been doing this little talk, but you guys are awesome, and I'm happy to fight alongside you. And thank you again for joining us on the political deep dive. Um, we're working hard to try and build a party that is worthy of support for people out there. And in if you're in, actually, if you're another thing, instead of actually just with being a delegate, if you are interested in running for a national party position, please let us know, because we want to get people out there, providing a slate for people to kind of stem the tide on this takeover talk. So again, visit my sponsor, the Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia, Travis Rednick, Facebook.com, the Deep End Antiques. Great stuff. And I really appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. We'll be on next week. We have a guest, and I'm drawing a blank on who it is. AJ Jewell. There it is. Yes, AJ Jewell will be joining us on the Political Deep Dive next week as a member of, we'll be talking about her work in liberty, her work as a libertarian author, and she'll be joining the panel talking about the news of the week. We'll get back to talking about the news of the week, and thank you, everyone. This has been my longest show of this current cycle of the Political Deep Dive, and I really appreciate everyone hanging on to the end. So everyone have a great week, and we will talk to everyone on next Sunday.